Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the soft loam of the forest, the kind that clings to your boots and muffles your steps. You're walking a narrow trail at dusk, the trees tall and patient around you, like they've been waiting for centuries just to hear your thoughts. There's a faint crunch underfoot leaves, maybe, but also something stranger, deeper. Below the fallen needles and damp moss lies an entire world, silent, ancient, and buzzing with life in slow motion. You probably won't survive this if you're a dead tree. Because under your feet, something is waiting for you. A colony of fungi, stretching miles beneath the surface, forming a web more complex than any man-made network, alive, aware, and just a little bit hungry. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You keep walking, but now you feel it. The ground is communicating, not in words, but in pulses, slow chemical messages exchanged between roots and fungal threads called hyphae. These strands, impossibly thin, stretch through the soil like a nervous system, connecting plants, trees, shrubs, and even mosses in what scientists lovingly call the mycorrhizal network. But you're in the middle of it, like a signal passing through someone else's conversation. Here's the twist. This isn't some fringe theory whispered by woodland druids. It's established science. In the 1990s, ecologist Suzanne Simard revealed that trees were not lone warriors, but generous participants in a vast underground exchange. Birch trees send sugar to fir trees when they're struggling. Older trees feed their saplings. It's like the forest has social security, but underground, and run by mushrooms. The mushrooms you see popping out of the dirt after a rain, they're just the fruit. Like apples on a tree. The real body, the mycelium, sprawls like an invisible lacework, spreading quietly, slowly, persistently. Some of these networks are unimaginably old. There's one in Oregon that covers nearly 4 square miles and may be over 2,000 years old. It's affectionately known as the humongous fungus, because biologists too love a good pun. As you duck beneath a low-hanging branch, you step unknowingly on part of this ancient body. It doesn't flinch. It just listens. You see, fungi don't hear like we do, but they respond to vibrations. The pressure of your footsteps sends subtle shifts through the ground, which the mycelium may detect. Scientists are still unsure just how much fungi can sense or react to, but experiments suggest they learn in bizarre non-brain ways. Historians still argue whether early forest-dwelling civilizations, like the Druids or the forest monks of Mount Koya in Japan, understood this underground web, at least spiritually. Many of their rituals revolved around fungi, trees, and the perceived breath of the forest. Whether it was real knowledge or poetic intuition, we'll never know. But you can feel it, can't you? The idea that the forest isn't just alive, but aware? Up ahead, a fallen log rests like a skeleton rib, and from its cracks spring clusters of mushrooms, delicate, firm, and reaching like tiny satellite dishes. They're listening too. Some species of mushrooms grow toward tree roots, forming partnerships. Others eavesdrop. Fungi that don't form friendly bonds are labeled saprotrophs, a fancy term meaning, I eat dead stuff. But the network itself doesn't judge. It simply grows. Connects, waits. Now here's a strange tidbit you might not expect. Some mycelial networks remember where they've been. Experiments with slime molds, distant fungal cousins, show they can solve mazes and remember paths for weeks. Without a brain. Without neurons. Just by changing how their bodies grow in response to stimuli. Your GPS can barely manage that without crashing. As you pause by a stump and press your hand to the damp wood, you might wonder if you're part of the conversation too. Are you interrupting something? Or has the forest simply folded you in? Just another data point in the long, slow exchange of nutrients, signals, and time. A gust of wind rustles the canopy, and the light fades a little more. But below you, in the darkness beneath the roots, something continues. Steady, ancient, and weirdly beautiful. The language of the forest. Spoken in sugars, carried in threads, and translated by mushrooms that never sleep. You keep moving. The air is cooler now, tinged with the earthy scent of moss, rain, and something deeper, something slightly metallic, like petrichor laced with memory. Around you, the trees grow denser, taller, as if they're leaning in to hear your thoughts. You glance down and realize you've been stepping over little orange mushrooms without even noticing. Some look like tiny umbrellas. Others resemble open mouths, mid-whisper. You half expect one to say hi, but what they're really doing is far stranger. These fungi aren't passive participants in the forest. They're manipulators, engineers, and at times, little biochemical con artists. Here's how it works. Most green plants, including the towering pines around you, can photosynthesize. They turn sunlight into sugar. But fungi? Not so much. They're sugar freeloaders. To survive, they cozy up to tree roots, form microscopic connections, and trade nutrients. A fungus might provide phosphorus or nitrogen. In return, the tree offers sugar, fresh from its leafy solar panels. At first glance, it's a sweet trade. But zoom in a little further, and things get shady. Certain fungi, especially the cunning ectomycorrhizal types, have been caught hoarding nutrients from one tree and selectively feeding others. Some even slow down their host's growth just to extract more sugar. One researcher called them carbon bandits in mushroom hats. And honestly, that sounds like a folk band you'd accidentally see live at a forest festival. And yet, just when you start to feel suspicious of fungi's motives, they flip the narrative again. Because in many forests, especially older ones, these same fungi act like first responders. When a tree is sick or dying struck by lightning, damaged by drought fungi detect the stress signals and reroute nutrients from nearby trees to keep it alive. They act like an underground circulatory system, responding faster than any above-ground aid. In 1983, after Mount St. Helens erupted and wiped out a vast stretch of Washington forest, ecologists were shocked by how quickly plant life bounced back. The secret wasn't just seeds or rain. It was fungi. Spores from surviving mycorrhizal networks, buried deep in the ash, helped kickstart regrowth, feeding the roots of new saplings even before they broke the surface. You step around a gnarled root, nearly tripping, and notice a cluster of dark, leathery mushrooms tucked beneath a fern. These aren't the bright, cheerful toadstools of fairy tales. These are wood-decomposing, fungi, stoic, serious, and incredibly important. They break down lignin, the tough stuff that gives wood its strength. Without them, fallen trees would just accumulate forever, like biological Jenga blocks that never fall. In fact, for centuries, medieval forests across Europe were piled with unrotted timber because colder climates meant fewer efficient decomposer fungi. Historians still argue whether this slowed the rate of forest regeneration or inspired certain myths about haunted woods, where nothing ever dies properly. Hard to say. But when you've got forests that don't rot and mushrooms that refuse to help, you can see how spooky folklore would take root. There's also the matter of zombie ants. Oh yes, let's get weird. In tropical forests, certain fungi like Ophiocordyceps unilateralis infect ants, hijack their central nervous systems, and force them to climb vegetation before biting down and dying. Then the fungus grows a stalk straight out of the ant's head, like a grim little flag. You've probably seen it in documentaries or horror games. But here's the wild bit. Each fungal species targets just one ant species. It's a one-on-one mind control showdown, refined over millennia. You shiver slightly, not from fear, but from fascination. Because this level of biological precision borders on the miraculous. Or the maniacal. Back in our quiet forest, though, the manipulation is subtler. Fungi still shift resources, prioritize certain plants, and even suppress competition. They'll poison the soil around their turf to block rival fungi or allelopathic plants. Go ahead, try whispering that to the trees. You think you're looking at peace and harmony, but underground, it's Game of Thrones with spores. Yet through all this, the forest heals. Because fungi also do the work no one else wants to. They break down oil spills. They filter heavy metals. Some researchers are even training fungi to digest plastics using species like Pestaloteuopsis microspora, which can munch on polyurethane like it's gummy bears. Nature's janitors, rebranded as environmental superheroes. And it's not just Earth. NASA has tested fungi on the International Space Station. Certain species can survive space radiation better than humans. There's serious talk, no joke about using fungi to terraform Mars. Imagine walking on red dust and seeing a mushroom growing in the shadow of a rover. Strange? Yes. But maybe also inevitable. You pause again, letting your fingertips drift across a bark patch covered in lichen. Fungi, remember, don't always work alone. Lichens are symbiotic mashups fungi plus algae, or cyanobacteria-like forest startup companies that merge departments and now run a mini eco-business on rocks and tree trunks. Some lichens are used in dyes, perfumes, or medicine. One, Usnea, has even shown antibiotic properties. So the next time someone calls you a fun guy, just smile and say you're multifunctional. You walk on, the forest now a little more alive, a little more complicated. Every step whispers old secrets through the soil, echoing fungal bargains and battles you'll never see. But you're part of the equation now, breathing their spores, listening with your feet. Just another story in the fungal network's library of strange, quiet wonders. You're deeper in the woods now. The path behind you has faded into leaf litter and loamy silence, and the sky above is just a cool wash of gray through tangled branches. It feels like you're being watched, but not in a creepy way. More like observed, noticed, maybe even anticipated, like the forest has paused just to see what you'll do next. Your boots sink slightly into the ground, soft with centuries of rot. This isn't decay as you know it, not the Hollywood horror kind, but something quieter, more sacred. Here, death is just another ingredient. A leaf falls, a mushroom appears, a log crumbles to rich, dark soil. This is the fungi's feast, and they dine with slow elegance. You kneel beside a dead tree, its bark sloughing off in paper-thin curls, revealing the white threads of mycelium weaving their way through the pulp. It's gorgeous, in a quiet, unsettling way like veins inside the wood, but alive with purpose. These decomposers are specialists. Tremits versicolor, also known as turkey tail, fans across the log like a tiny staircase of rainbows. You'd think it was decorative, but it's also medicinal, used in traditional Chinese medicine for immune support. Beauty, function, fungus, triple threat. One fun, slightly disgusting tidbit. Some fungi are so efficient at breaking down organic matter that they've been used to compost human bodies. Yep. In Washington state, you can opt for natural organic reduction, basically being broken down in a pod with wood chips and fungi. It's called terramation. Future tombstones might just be mushroom gardens. Here lies Dave, now nourishing chanterelles. You might laugh, but it makes you think. This entire forest is standing on its own history, every tree rooted in the mulch of its ancestors. Every patch of soil a cemetery of insects, squirrels, travelers. Historians still argue whether ancient burial practices, like those of Neolithic forest tribes, were intentionally tied to fungal activity. Did they understand how decay led to growth, or was it just instinct? Either way, they placed their dead among trees, often under mossy mounds that today bloom with mushrooms. Quiet markers of memory. You shift your weight and spot a puffball nearby, round and pale like a tiny moon. If you poked it, it'd puff out a cloud of spores, millions of them, floating silently through the air like invisible snow. Most won't land anywhere useful. Some will. That's the fungal way. Don't aim, just overwhelm the odds. Of course, not all fungi wait for death to act. Some speed it up. Take honey fungus, for example, a name that sounds sweet and harmless, but in reality, it's one of the most aggressive pathogens in temperate forests. It infects trees at the roots, killing them from the inside out while pretending to be a friend. A literal mycorrhizal mafia. You'll know it by the white rot and black rhizomorphs cord-like growths snaking through the soil like fungal bootlaces. And here's a historical nugget for your dreams. The Great Fire of London in 1666. It was partly blamed on timber that hadn't been properly treated. Some scholars suspect fungal rot weakened the beams. That's right. Mushrooms may have contributed to one of the most famous fires in human history. Smoky, stealthy little anarchists. Still, there's wonder here too. You pass a rotting log, and nestled in the bark is a slime mold technically not a fungus, but close enough to be invited to the party. It moves, not fast, but visibly. In shimmering gold trails, it searches for food, mapping the forest floor like a gooey GPS system. Scientists once used slime mold to model Tokyo's rail network, and it nailed the most efficient path. No budget, no politics, just instinct and logic wrapped in jelly. You crouch, watching the mold shimmer, and realize there's something spiritual about decay when it's this intentional. You're taught to fear rot, but fungi revel in it. They honor endings by turning them into beginnings. It's a slow, looping magic trick. Above you, a branch snaps not loudly, just a soft crack and a squirrel darts past. It startles a small owl, who blinks at you with suspicion before vanishing into shadow. Even the animals here are part of the recycling system. Fungi live in their fur, in their droppings, even in their guts. Some insects carry fungal spores like little couriers. Others eat nothing but fungus. In tropical forests, whole ant colonies build gardens, fungus farms, carefully feeding and cultivating their fungal partners, sometimes for generations. You, meanwhile, struggle to keep a houseplant alive for 2 weeks. As twilight begins to melt into night, you reach a low grove where the earth feels especially spongy. You sit, and it feels like sinking into a memory. The ground here is a patchwork of death: leaves, bones, bark, and beetle shells. And yet it pulses with new life. Tiny green shoots, delicate caps poking out of the soil. This is the cycle, and fungi are its architects. Not villains, not heroes, just quiet workers, building the next chapter with every decomposed paragraph. You lean back and close your eyes. The air smells like damp stone and cinnamon bark. Your breathing slows. Somewhere below you, the mycelium shifts, spreads, eats, remembers. It's not asleep. It never was. The forest dims now, not because the sun has vanished completely, but because something in the air feels thicker, darker, quieter. You've wandered past the mossy, welcoming parts and into a space where the trees stand farther apart, the fungi rarer, but somehow more intense. This is the mind space of the forest. Its archive. The area where fungi stop simply processing decay and start recording it. You walk slowly, careful not to snap any twigs. Every sound feels like an interruption. Beneath your feet, the network continues its endless labor-moving sugars, transferring information, deciding who gets to thrive and who gets ghosted. It's like being in a fungal stock exchange. Except here, the currency is carbon, and insider trading is just part of the system. You pause beside a birch tree. Its bark is flaking away, thin sheets peeling like an old scroll. Beneath it, ghostly mushrooms known as Mycena epipterygia glow faintly in the near dark. Not bright, just enough to notice if you stop squinting. You kneel to get closer, your breath catching in your throat. Bioluminescent fungi. These forest fairy lights have been a mystery for centuries. Roman historians wrote of glowing wood in dark swamps. Japanese folklore calls them foxfire, a ghostly trick used by yokai spirits. And modern science? Still shrugging a little. We know the glow comes from a compound called luciferin, which reacts with oxygen. But why some fungi glow is still up for debate. Some think it's to attract insects that will spread spores. Others argue it's just a byproduct. Historians still argue whether early civilizations used glowing fungi in lanterns or simply feared them as omens. You take a slow breath. This isn't just weird, it's haunting. Like the forest is gently lighting its own gravestones. And then you remember something even stranger. In certain regions of Eastern Europe, folktales warned against burning wood that glows at night. They said the light was a sign of spirits, and to disturb it would invite curses. One story claimed a whole village burned to the ground after using foxfire logs to light their ovens. Were they just using bioluminescent fungus? Probably. But still, maybe don't try it at home. You stand up again, brushing off dirt, and continue walking. Around you, the forest becomes a web of relationships you can't see. Fungi, trees, bacteria, moss, it's all interconnected. One famous example, the mother tree theory. In old-growth forests, certain massive trees act as hubs in the underground network, communicating with seedlings, sharing nutrients, even recognizing their own offspring. The key facilitator? Mycorrhizal fungi. Without them, the mother tree is just a tree. With them, it's a strategist, a guardian, a wireless router for plants. This isn't some new age fantasy. It's been backed up by experiments with radioactive isotopes and carbon tracing. Trees can signal distress through the fungal network. They can warn others of drought, of beetles, of danger. It's like a forest-wide emergency broadcast system. You'd think the trees were texting, but here's the kicker. Sometimes the signals don't go to the trees at all. Fungi intercept them, alter them, even block them. They're not just messengers, they're editors, moderators of the forest Reddit thread. They decide what gets amplified and what gets ghosted into silence. And unlike us, they never sleep. You take a step and hear a soft crunch. It's not leaves. You glance down and realize you've stepped on a dead bird, already half absorbed into the earth. No smell, no rot, just the gentle, quiet work of fungi and time. You bow your head slightly, out of instinct more than reverence. Here's a weird tidbit for your dreams tonight. In 2016, researchers discovered a fungus in Denmark that grows exclusively on bird droppings left on leaves. Its name? Phaeotrichoconus crotalarii. Try saying that 3 times fast. You've got to admire the specificity. Like a sommelier who only drinks rainwater filtered through pigeon poop. Your path turns toward a small stream now, bubbling gently under a tangle of roots. It's crossed by a fallen tree, soft with moss. You climb onto it, balancing carefully, and halfway across, you pause. Because right here on the bark, halfway over water, there's a tiny cluster of mushrooms that look fake. Glossy red caps, bright white dots, like plastic props from a cartoon. You know what they are even before your brain catches up. Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric, classic fairy tale shroom. Red cap, white polka dots, hallucinogenic and highly toxic if you don't prepare it just right. Vikings may have used it before battle, going into berserker rages. Siberian shamans drank reindeer urine that had processed the mushroom safely. Yes, you heard that right. Reindeer eat the mushroom, humans drink the reindeer pee. Sleep tight. But here's the twist. Despite the bad rep, Amanita muscaria isn't always lethal. In low doses, it's been used medicinally, ritually, and even some fringe researchers argue, as the true soma described in ancient Vedic texts. Others say no, absolutely not. Historians still argue whether the mushroom or a different plant was the real deal. One scholar called the whole debate a psychedelic goose chase, which, if nothing else, should be a band name. You hop down from the log, brushing your hands on your pants. You feel different now, like the forest has offered you a secret handshake. You didn't ask for it, but you got it anyway, because you didn't just see the mushrooms. You listened, and they noticed. You've wandered long enough now that the night has settled fully. Not the scary kind of night, no wolves howling, no jump scares. Just a soft, weightless dark that settles over everything like velvet. The kind of dark that makes your thoughts slow down. The kind that wraps around you, not to hide things, but to hold them still long enough for you to notice. You step into a clearing lit by moonlight filtering through the trees, and everything gleams just a little. Mushrooms catch the silver glow on their caps like porcelain teacups set out for some secret nighttime banquet. The air smells of wet bark and fresh spores. Somewhere nearby, a frog chirps like a squeaky door. And now, finally, you feel it. The language. You've walked the forest floor, you've touched the mycelium, and you've stood among the whispering trees. But now you begin to understand the forest dialect, a quiet push here, a signal there, a nutrient passed in silence. This is the secret language of mushrooms, and you're lucky enough to be eavesdropping. What's being said? Well, that depends who's speaking. Let's say an oak tree is stressed, maybe from drought. Its roots send chemical signals. The mycorrhizal fungi around it interpret the data, then pass along a biochemical SOS to neighboring trees. Nearby birches hear the signal and slow their water use in solidarity. Or they don't. Because remember, fungi choose what gets said and to whom. Sometimes they're allies. Sometimes they're selfish. The network speaks in favors and strategy, not morals. It's not just trees either. Recent studies suggest fungi might communicate with each other using electrical impulses, like neurons. Microvoltage flickers that spike in response to touch or changes in light or chemical shifts. One scientist even mapped fungal spikes onto linguistic patterns, pauses, emphases, rhythms. The result? Fungi might use something akin to a 50-word vocabulary. We don't know the syntax. We barely understand the grammar. But something is happening. And yet, maybe they're not talking at all. Maybe we're just humans, staring at glowing logs and clicking voltmeters like toddlers with walkie-talkies, trying to understand what the trees have always known. Maybe the forest doesn't speak like we do. Maybe it remembers. In Japan, ancient forests are said to hold kodama tree spirits that whisper to those who walk quietly enough. And in Northern Europe, there's a word, Waldine Samkeit. It means the feeling of being alone in the woods, but not lonely, just witnessed. Standing here, with the mushrooms glowing at your feet and the canopy rustling gently above, you feel that exact thing. You're not the speaker in this place. You're not even the audience. You're just allowed to exist here. For now. You settle down on a patch of moss near a ring of mushrooms, fairy ring, obviously. A nearly perfect circle, caused by the outward growth of a single fungal organism. Over time, the center dies and the edges push outward, like ripples from a dropped pebble. Some rings are hundreds of years old, their exact origin lost in leaf mold and rainfall. There's one in France believed to be nearly 700 meters wide. Scientists have nicknamed it the Witch's Circle, because of course they did. You lie back, staring at the stars flickering through the trees. The mushrooms around you feel like sentinels. They say fairy rings are bad luck, that you shouldn't step inside them, that time runs differently in their center, that those who dance with the fae may never return. But right now, you don't feel cursed. You feel connected. The earth beneath your body is warm, not in temperature, but in memory. You're lying on the body of something old, ancient, curious, and still alive. The mycelial web is here beneath your spine, stretched across the forest floor like an endless nerve. It's seen more than you. It survived every fire, every frost. It watched mammals crawl out of the sea. It watched empires rise, fall, and compost themselves into stories. And here you are, a creature of bone and breath, listening. Just before sleep reaches you, you remember this. In 1998, scientists discovered a single Armillaria ostoi fungal colony in Oregon, one organism, stretching over 3.4 square miles, estimated to be more than 2,500 years old. It weighs hundreds of tons, and most of it lives underground. You could hike across it and never know, but you'd be walking on the back of one of Earth's oldest living beings. That's the language, not words, not grammar, just being, spreading, holding, connecting. The forest doesn't speak to you like a person. It speaks around you, through you, between the moss and the bark and the slow breath of decay that turns into life. You've wandered far enough. You've heard enough. It's time to sleep. So now, as you lie in your bed or your couch, or maybe curled up on a bus with headphones on, the forest still hums in the background of your thoughts. It lingers there, not loudly but gently, like a light rain tapping a window far away. The mycelial threads you imagined, they don't vanish. They fade into the spaces between thoughts. That idea of silent communication, slow, pulsing, patient, becomes the rhythm of your breath. Inhale, exhale. Signal, response, stillness. Everything you saw, the glowing mushrooms, the whispering trees, the rings of ancient fungi still reaching outward, they're not myths anymore. They're simply quiet truths, too subtle for shouting. You've stepped into their circle now, and even as you drift into sleep, some part of you still walks the forest floor. Let that stay with you. Let the forest stillness settle into your muscles. Let the soft, loamy ground cradle your memories. Let the fungi carry your thoughts like spores on a slow breeze. Everything is connected, even here, even now. You don't have to remember every fact. You don't have to hold on to every name. You just have to let go, gently. The night is still. The forest watches over itself. And you're part of it now. So close your eyes. Let the world go dim. And sleep, soft and deep, beneath the quiet pulse of the woods.